a spell that you cast is asking for one future, but your energy, your choices, your habits, even your posture is pointing towards another one. Spiritual magnetism isn't about pretending to be positive, and it's not avoiding all the fearful thoughts that we might have. Instead, it's about bringing your emotions, your energy, and your thoughts into alignment with the person that you are becoming. So, tonight we're going to be talking all about spiritual magnetism and how to stop contradicting the desire and the life that you wish for and actually figure out how to come into alignment with that. So, merry meet. I'm Aislin. This is Ask Aislin. Tonight, I'm here with part one of spiritual magnetism. So, this is aligning your energy to the life you desire. We'll be doing part two. I'll explain that in a little bit, what that's going to be about. But welcome to those who are joining us live. Leave a heart or a thumbs up somewhere in the feed, whether you're live or watching back in replay. This helps us get the feed out to more people. And of course, as always, we have a Q&A at the end. You can leave your questions and your comments, and I'll be watching those as we go. So like I said, this is part one. As I began to make this episode, I realized that it was going to be far too long. So I'm splitting it into part two. So next week, we're going to look at how to maintain your energetic alignment even when life gets difficult. Today's episode is more about what does it even mean to be in alignment energetically with what you are trying to achieve. So we're going to start by talking about spiritual magnetism. What is it? So spiritual magnetism is the practice of cultivating and embodying energy that supports what you want to create. So it's about the life that you are wishing for, the life that you would like to have, and it's aligning your energy so that it is vibrating at the same energy. Your choices, the decisions that you make are vibrating at the same energy as the thing that you actually want. So this involves more than just our thoughts, though. It's not just thinking positively. It also can involve our energy itself, the energy that we create within our own spiritual practices, the expectations that we repeatedly reinforce. And we'll get into all of this in more detail in just a bit. It's about the way that you carry and express yourself. And sometimes we don't even think about our posture, for example. It's about the decisions that you make. It's about the actions that you take after your spell work or your magical practice. And I just realized that my microphone was sitting on the. I hope you guys could hear some of that. And it's more than just sitting and passively wishing for something to happen. So it's not just sitting and trying to vibrate in a certain way. Spiritual magnetism asks us to participate. It's definitely not a passive action. To ask in particular asks us to participate in the direction that we have chosen. So as I was kind of developing this episode, I'll just explain briefly how I developed it. So I take a lot of walks, and I do a lot of thinking and contemplating. And I was just thinking about some of the things that I have started to develop and bring into my life to aid the goals that I have. And I started just kind of jotting those down in the notes app in my phone. And as I was doing that, I was like, well, this is kind of turning into an episode, right? How do we stay aligned with the energy that we want to create, with the life that we want? And also part of what I was kind of jotting down too is what do we do when we find that our energy is not aligned, or like we're going through some really hard times? And how do we stay focused on the path and the goals that we have in front of us, even when things get difficult, right? So that's more like what part two is about. Part one, though, I started kind of thinking about Hermeticism and magic and the connection to the law of vibration, which is really, it has some connections to what we're talking about today. So, spiritual magnetism is a modern magical framework. It is particularly inspired by the principle of vibration, which comes from Hermeticism. In particular, was presented in the book The Kybalion in 1908. The Kybalion describes vibration as the third Hermetic principle. And so these principles, if you don't know much about the book, these principles are kind of like the foundation of magic, and how do we create things out of matter? How do we change matter in order to create the life that we desire? How does our spells work? Hermeticism seeks to explain some of that. So, this particular teaching, the law of vibration, talks about how motion and vibration exist throughout matter. Well, we already know that in physics. Matter, in fact, there was a time when we didn't even know that. So let me just back up without going into a huge history lesson. There was a time when in science we thought that everything, if something was still, so for example, there's a glass sitting over here to the side of me, and it appears to be still, and so we believed that everything was still, that appeared to be still. But as we were able to look at things at a deeper microscopic level, we realized that things actually are vibrating. Even solid things are vibrating. And things that are fast, like things that are gas in the gas state, or the water, the liquid state, those things are vibrating at higher vibrations, higher frequencies, and then the things that are more solid, they are vibrating at lower ones, slower, more slowly. And so that's what physics teaches us. But Hermeticism takes it a step further, and it says, well, like everything vibrates, everything, including spiritual things. So, like the soul, for example, your spirit vibrates, and the difference between your spirit and that glass sitting over to the side of me is just a matter of vibration. It's just a difference in the way that those two things vibrate. And so, the idea behind the principle of vibration is that if you were to grasp that and really fully understand what that means, the Kabbalion suggests that you could change the vibration of matter around you, and objects and energy forms of any kind, and that would include yourself. So you can create by changing vibration, right? So what that means is that it's very exciting, right? It means that we are not spiritually inert, and it means that we carry and we express energy. And if we can change our own energy, conceivably we could change the energy in other things as well. But it's a big revelation just to know that we ourselves could change our own energy. And so modern witches, many of you probably already know that at a fundamental level. Maybe sometimes just hearing it again makes a light bulb go off, but it is really the core crux teaching of what spiritual magnetism is all about. We carry and we express energy. Now, spiritual magnetism, though, takes it a step further and asks us to become more conscious of the energy that we carry and how we carry it, in fact. So, as witches, we already use the principle of vibration. You choose colors for your candles aligned to a certain spell or intention that you have. You might choose to do a spell on a certain day that's aligned with the energy of a certain planet or day of the week or a deity or something like that. So you're already practicing the principle of vibration. But spiritual magnetism asks you to take it a little bit further and to remember that you also are an ingredient in the spell. And this helps to explain why spells don't work out as well when you are not feeling well, or you're not into it, or you don't believe in it, which is going to be something we're going to talk about in just a bit. Um, so, what what I do want to differentiate is that spiritual magnetism does not mean that this is the law of attraction, which it is not. And no shade to the people who are into the law of attraction. I'm really not one of them. I fell into the law of attraction crowd back in my 20s, and I'll explain a little bit later about some of the thought processes I had while I was really kind of into the law of attraction. But this is not the law of attraction. In spiritual magnetism, we do not believe that passing negative thoughts are harming us or creating our reality. You got 80,000 thoughts going through your head. Most of them are negative, and most of us are not going to be able to avoid that. So that is not what this is about. It's not about trying to get rid of all your negative thoughts. This is also not about the idea that feeling afraid could make the feared event happen. I know that that was something that I was always worried about with law of attraction. I remember this particularly this one time walking down the street, and it was late at night. It's LA, and I was alone, and I started thinking about, oh my God, all these people get raped when they're walking home. And so then I started fear, oh my God, I'm going to draw a rapist to me because I'm thinking about this. That is not what spiritual magnetism is about. It's not, you're not drawing your feared things to you. Your grief, your anger, your anxiety, your disappointment, your negative feelings that you will have because we are human beings, these do not make you spiritually defective in any way, and you absolutely can create the life you want, a very, very positive life, even with those feelings. Difficult events in your life are not proof that you are on the wrong vibration. That is absolutely not true. And I think that's where this really does diverge from law of attraction. Sometimes, and this is what we'll get into next week when we talk about, staying aligned when difficult things are happening. Sometimes difficult things are part of the path, and we're supposed to grow and learn from them and do the shadow work around them. Those difficult events and things do not mean that you are at a low vibration. Absolutely not. So there is a big difference, though, between having a fearful thought and then repeatedly allowing yourself to allow that fear to determine your choices. So I'm just going to say that again because I think that's like a big point of tonight's episode. There's a big difference between having a fearful thought and repeatedly allowing that fear to determine your choices and your options and what you do next. So, for example, let's say a person wants to become more visible in their work, whatever that is. They want to become more visible on social media. They want to become more visible at their job, or maybe they have a business and they want to be out in front of more people. But let's suppose that that person fears criticism or failure or judgment or something like that. So they will repeatedly respond to that fear by doing all kinds of things like hiding their work, not showing it to people, refusing opportunities, never telling anybody what they do. So they did not attract their kind of invisibility because they were afraid. It wasn't their fear that attracted it. Their fear itself isn't what attracted the invisibility or this feeling that nobody's finding them or seeing them. But their fear is influencing the choices that they make and what they do. And then that is what is influencing the fact that they feel like they are invisible. So I'm going to get into now kind of three core teachings of spiritual magnetism. We're going to start with the first one, which is direct your energy toward what you desire, not towards what you fear. But before I do that, I did want to jump into the chat and say hi to anybody who is joining us live, especially. So, welcome everybody, and feel free to leave questions and comments, like I said. So, welcome to Taliesin, and Debbie's here, Mary Meet, and Andrea, and Tommy, Mary Meet, and Cersei is here, and Lisa, and Jenny, Mary Meet. And Jenny said you guys could hear, thank goodness, because it was like the mic was sitting right there, thank goodness. Mary Meet to Pamela. And Debbie said, is there a beginner's book on vibration? Not that I know of off the top of my head. It finds its way into a lot of sort of like Witchcraft 101 books. There will be books that will talk about like the principles of magic or the laws of magic, and then it will make its way into that. So like, I'll see if I can find one particular one that does it, and I'll leave that in the chat afterwards for you. But many of those kind of Witchcraft 101 books will talk through that. Debbie said, "Can you put the name of the book in the chat?" Yeah, so I can't really like type it right now, but it's the Kybalion, and it's a very old book. Like I said, it's from 1908. It's spelled Kybalion, and it's kind of one of those books that I talked about. The book The Golden Bough. I've talked about that one before. It's an old book written in the late 1800s, but it's a book that a lot of people, modern witchcraft authors, draw upon ideas from the Golden Bough, just like they'll draw on ideas from the Kybalion. But Okay, so and like I'm saying too, you don't necessarily need to read it, and in fact, I bet you can actually find it online as a PDF. Okay, but I'll put a link to it in the chat afterwards. All right, so keep your questions coming, and welcome to everybody who's joining us that I didn't see. So let's talk about let's talk about the first principle. Okay, so the first principle of spiritual magnetism is direct your energy towards what you desire, not toward preventing what you don't desire. So this is where we go a little bit of astray here sometimes, and it can kind of delve into that law of attraction. We are, again, I just want to make sure it's very clear, we're not attracting negative things to us. But what we are doing when we're very fearful is we are putting ourselves into a position where we're making choices out of fear. And so one of the most important things that you can do is you can ask yourself, when you go to make a choice and you have to make a decision, ask yourself, am I making this decision out of fear? And if the answer is yes, I think I would pause and I would ask myself, is it an avoidable decision? Because decisions made out of fear are not always the best ones for us. Now, sometimes they're unavoidable, like you have to pay rent, and so you have to do something. You have to take a job that you don't want to do because you're fearful of it. But at least fearful of not being able to pay your rent. But at the very least, pause and ask yourself, what's behind my making this decision? And if it's fear, see if you can delve a little bit deeper into it, and so you can get really clear on your motives. So I think what you really want to ask yourself with this first kind of key idea of putting your energy and your attention toward what you want is ask yourself, where does the greatest share of your attention go? And be really honest with yourself. Is your thinking, is it a lot of it fear-based? Are you kind of ruminating about all the bad things that could happen? And if you are, again, it's not to like say, oh, you're doing a bad job. It's just become much more aware of that. Maybe do some shadow work around it, get deeper into it so you can kind of understand that where that fear is coming from. So because ideally in spiritual magnetism, we'd like to put the vast majority of our energy towards what we want to create, not what we fear will be created, in the absence of that thing that we want. So are we putting the energy towards what we want to create, or are we putting it towards everything that we fear could prevent that thing from happening? When we focus our desired outcome, the other thing to be clear here too is it's not about ignoring risks or pretending that obstacles don't exist. It's not Pollyanna. It's not like just paint your thoughts and make them positive. You could still be aware of negative things. You can still be aware of risks, like the risks in a business or risks if you turn down this offer or different. You can be aware of all those things, but just want to be clear on how much of your energy is put towards your fears versus what you want. And that's really what spiritual magnetism is asking us to do in that very first step. We acknowledge the problem, and we will deliberately return our attention back to the direction that we want to move. So it's fine to pause and be like, yeah, I recognize that this is an issue. I don't have enough money for this thing, or I'm not sure where next month's rent is coming from, or, my business isn't making the sales it needs to, or, I'm not making progress in my love life. Like I'm not finding good dates to go on. It doesn't matter, what the intention is, what realm of your life it's in. You can acknowledge the problem. That's where you pause, right? That's where you can start to do some shadow work around it. But then you return your attention back to the pathway of what you want. And we're going to talk about that. That will lead us into the second principle in just a moment, which kind of builds on this first one. And so what do you do once you turn your attention back to what you want? Well, what do you do? So, but let me just, before I do that, before I go to the second principle, I just wanted to kind of take you through like how a person would do this in an example. So I'm going to go back to this idea of like somebody wants to be visible. So let's suppose somebody wants to offer a class or a service. Maybe you've been studying tarot for a long time and you'd like to get in and do some readings for people, right? For pay. Or you got a creative project that you want to introduce at work, or there's just something that you're creating that you want out there, right? And so the fear kind of based thoughts and direction a person could go is like, well, what if nobody's interested in this thing? What if people judge me? What if I fail? What if they don't like it? What if people leave me? What if I'm not qualified enough? So if you're being honest with yourselves, you've probably had some of these thoughts. You get in these loops right into this fear-based thinking. So it's okay to pause, acknowledge it. Look, I'm in fear-based thinking right now. I'm thinking about all the feared outcomes. So I kind of make note of that. That's something to do some shadow work around. But then we redirect ourselves back to different thoughts and different direction when it comes to our project or this thing we're trying to get out there in front of people. So what do I want people to receive from this? So now I'm really changing my energy into like the creation that I'm making. How could I communicate the value of this thing very clearly so people understand how valuable it is? What action could I take next? What's the next best step to get this thing out there and get it to a place where it succeeds? How do I want to feel when I share this thing with other people? How do I want them to feel when they receive it? So I've just changed my mindset and I'm focused more now on the thing I'm creating and less on the thing that I'm fearing, right? So the second set of questions, again, it's not going to it's not guaranteeing our success. It doesn't mean like, oh, this thing I'm about to launch is going to be super successful, but it does start to direct my energy into the right place that's more aligned with who I want to be. And that leads us into the next principle of spiritual magnetism, or the next step in it, which is act in alignment with the person that you are becoming. So this is a phrase that I learned probably like, well, let's see, it's 2026 and I started my business in 2022. So this is going back about 4 years ago. I was taking all kinds of online classes. And I would take all kinds of free online classes about how to build a business, how to get out there in front of people, how to grow social media, all kinds of things. And somehow I ended up taking this class. I thought it was on one thing. I thought it was about I think what I thought it was about was building my own social media presence, but it was actually a class on how to become a person who builds other people's social media, which I have no interest in doing. I don't particularly like doing my own, so I don't want to make this a profession, build somebody else's. So my first thought was like, oh my God, I'm in the wrong class. And but there's something that just told me to stay and just to listen to what they're saying. And this really was real life changing for me, because at one point the guy said, I wasn't even listening. I was only half listening to what he's even talking about. And then he says, act in alignment with the person you are becoming. And that really stuck with me. And I wrote it on a Post-it note and I put it by my computer and I made posts about it later and wrote elaborate things about it. But it really struck me. If you want something, think about the person that has that thing, or you in the future with that thing. Well, what would you be doing? What does a person who has that thing, what do they do? What do they look like? How do they feel? Who are they around? And that's a way that you start to get in alignment with the person that you are becoming. They speak confidently, even when they're not quite confident yet. You have a certain poise about you. And so I started to think about like, well, what would a successful business owner do? And I started doing those things. And I started applying this to other parts of my life, like wanting to get pregnant, for example. A pregnant person isn't sleeping 4 hours a day. They're probably sleeping 8 to 9 hours a day. And they're eating better foods and they're doing all these things. And so, like, why not? Why wait till we have those things to become that way? Let's just become that way now. And that is a way that spiritual magnetism works. It starts to align your energy more towards what you want and less away from those fears, right? So sometimes people think we have to wait till we have the thing to act different or behave different. We have to actually be confident before we speak confidently. We'll speak confidently first. Or they think that we will only be visible when after we stop being afraid. Well, it's okay to be afraid and still take that step out there and become a little more visible, right? Or they think, oh, someday I'll establish boundaries when I feel stronger. You can establish the boundaries now. You don't have to feel super strong in order to set up your boundaries, right? Or, I'll only be taken seriously once somebody validates me, or I get this degree, or all those things. You could be taken seriously now without those things. And that's really what acting in alignment with the person you are becoming is all about. It's putting your energy into the direction that you want, not into the directions that you fear. And so it even comes down to the way that you carry yourself. So I remember that there was a woman named Barbara who lived two houses down from me when I was a little kid. And Barbara was very confident, and she had really good posture, right? And she would walk up and down the street. And for some reason, my mom didn't like her, and a lot of the other ladies in the neighborhood didn't like her. And I'm not really sure, but I bet you we could do some shadow work and find out if they didn't like her confidence or something like that. But I observed my mom, I've observed her over the years, and my mom's posture is very like slumped over, and not only is this hard on our chakras, because when we have like really kind of slumped over posture, we're closing down the heart chakra, which really needs to be open in order to connect to people, um, you know, but we also appear less confident. So if you want to appear more confident, even in the way that you hold yourself and carry yourself and smile, and that helps you to align with the energy of confidence. So kind of notice in your own way that you carry yourself. Do you hunch your shoulders? Is your head tilted downward? Are you trying to make yourself look physically smaller? Or even if you're not trying, are you making yourself look physically smaller? You know, do you speak quietly because you're, expecting somebody to interrupt you? In contrast to that, lift your chest, relax your shoulders, raise your head, breathe deeper and more fully, take in more prana, more air, more energy, speak clearly at a natural volume, not in an apologetic way. And you would be surprised how different things are for you when you change that one subtle little thing. So, you can expand this beyond posture, but I'm just challenging you. If you have bad posture, or you are somebody who's shrinking to make yourself smaller, or maybe you don't even know, pay attention, see, because that is one subtle, small, little shift that you could make that would change a lot, I think. So, besides kind of the way that you carry yourself, there are other things that you can do. Like I said, kind of imagine what the person who has the thing you want looks like, and try to be more like that person, right? What do they do? What do they eat? Where do they go? How often how long do they sleep for? Um, you know, Even when you're not feeling, let's say you're looking for a job, even when you're not feeling totally qualified, put the application in anyway. What difference does it make? They can reject you fine, but they might not. I say that, tell this to my students all the time. Even if you don't think you're totally qualified, put it in anyway, right? You'll be in a barrel with a bunch of other people, but at least you put it in, right? And a person who's confidently looking for a job, that's what they do, right? They put the application in. Not being, if you're somebody who offers services, not being afraid to, charge a fair price, right? Wear something that helps you feel powerful when you are in front of people, and if you fear that you're going to be feeling nervous or something like that, wear a color or a ring or a piece of jewelry that always helps you feel more powerful. Do that, right? It's kind of like the glamour magic. Share your work, get out there, take the next step, even if it makes you nervous. Take it anyway, because that's what the person who has the thing you want is doing. Um, So I guess that kind of my question to you is, what would you do differently today if you trusted the person that you are becoming just 5% more? So I'm going to say that again, and feel free to share in the chat what you're, if you're called to share with us. But if anything, just at least think about this question. What would you do differently today if you trusted the person you were becoming just 5% more? Okay, I'm going to go back to the chat, and then we're going to talk about the third idea in spiritual magnetism, which is the best spell is the one that you believe in. But let me go back to the chat for just a moment here. So Tommy said, I slouch because I got used to it after I got tall. He said, I am 6'8". Yeah. And so slouching, there can be reasons why people have developed like posture, things like that. Like for me, I've shared this with some people. I don't think it's a super secret, but I developed a very serious eating disorder when I was quite young because I've always been tall myself. I was taller than all the other girls. I was as tall as some of the boys sometimes, and I was always pretty muscular. And I wanted to be smaller. And so I really developed really bad posture to compensate, to make myself smaller. So I would not stick out, I would blend in. But what I realized later is the kind of the ramifications of what that does to my energy, right? Because it's closing my heart chakra. So I understand there are reasons, like, believe me, I get it. Like there are reasons why people develop that. But just kind of think about what it could be doing to your energy, and just maybe work on opening your heart a little bit more. That's what I've been doing a lot, and it definitely helps. Um, so Debbie said, "Is this fake it till you make it?" Um, I don't like that term, just because it reminds me of someone that that didn't do a very good job of that. I think that if it helps you to understand it that way, yes. But I think it is a little bit different. Like we're acknowledging. I think when someone's fake it till you make it, I think there's a little Pollyanna with it. They're like ignoring the issues that might pop up when we are acting in alignment with the person we're becoming. We're trying to model ourselves after like the image of the person that we want to be, but we're still acknowledging the difficulties that are present in our life. So we're still doing the shadow work around it. We're not like in the clouds. We are still doing the work, right? We're keeping that vision of the person we want in our minds, and we're trying to act in alignment with that person. I hope that helps, but it's probably just a different kind of shade of fake it till you make it. And Merry Meet to Adam. Merry Meet. Yeah, Tommy said fear-based decisions have always been bad decisions for me. I think that fear-based decisions can be bad for majority of people. I know for me too, I agree with Tommy. When I make decisions out of fear, I will often pay for it in some way, whether it's pain in my body or a mental kind of state that creates pain in my body, or just not feeling good about it. I think too, the why it feels that way is because it's just out of alignment with what we actually want. Okay, so let me go back to the next, the third principle. So the third principle is, or the third kind of idea in spiritual magnetism is the best spell is the one that you believe in. So I'm going to tell you this, and this may be, many of you may already know this, and some of you this may be news to you. But when you read books on witchcraft or you see spells online, these are just spells that people made up and they worked for them. And so just because a spell is in a book or a bunch of people say this spell works, it doesn't necessarily mean it's going to work for you. And sometimes when you do that spell and it doesn't work for you, and then you think you've done something wrong and it's about you. And really what it's about is it just your belief wasn't behind it. It might even be an unconscious thing. It could be that the ingredients are elaborate and strange and they were hard to get, or You know, you just didn't like the way the words were. You thought it sounded stupid, but you said them anyway. Or you, maybe there's an intention in there that you just can't get behind and you just don't believe or trust enough. And so it just creates this lingering doubt as you're doing the spell. So to me, the spell that's going to work the best for everybody or for most people is going to be the one that you're behind it. You're behind it 100%. You believe in it. And maybe you believe in it because it came from a trusted person who assured you that it worked for them. So maybe that's the belief. That's okay, totally. But if you are reading a book or a person gives you a spell and you're like, I don't know, if you have that, like any of that kind of like doubt in your mind, to me, it would be much better to tweak the spell so that you can get more belief behind it or find a different one. You know, the spells, you know, the spells can contain all these elaborate ingredients. They can be aligned to timing, astrological timing. They can have all this flowery language. But if you're disconnected from it when you're performing it, then you're going to struggle unconsciously and maybe even consciously to direct the energy you need toward the place it needs to go. So belief does not have to mean that you have absolute certainty in the outcome of the spell, but you do have to believe to a degree that it's possible for you. So if you're doing a spell and you're like, I don't believe that's possible for me, then that is an indication you need to go back. You need to do some shadow work around some of your belief, uh, because believing your intention is possible is an ingredient in the spell. Um, Believing that the spell has meaning, feeling a genuine connection to the symbols that are being used, you know, believing that taking action matters or that the spell matters or it makes a difference, being prepared to participate once the spell or the ritual is over as well. So spells require us to do some real world action too. We do a job spell, we can't just sit and do nothing. We actually have to put in applications or go places and talk to people. We have to put that energy out there as well. So I think that, you know, when it comes down to your spell work, I personally believe that the very best spell that you can do, again, is the one that you believe in. And a lot of times the one that you believe in is one that you put some work into it. And so in our Demystifying Witchcraft course and with this, our you know, our initiates and our coven, one of the things that I will give people spells that I have used, but I really encourage people to try to create their own spells. Figure out what kind of magic you like. I used to do when I was first starting out. Yes, I followed all the spells in the books because I thought that's what I had to do. And then, as I got more advanced in my practice, I realized that there's certain kinds of magic that I like. I really like candle magic, and I really like sigils, and I really like making sachets. Those were the three things I liked the most when I was, you know, performing other people's spells from books. And so now all I have to do is know something about correspondences and energy and intention, and I can create my own spells using those catalysts. So, you know, you kind of think about that the next time that you're going to do a spell and you know you're just grabbing a spell off the internet. Really think about it. Am I aligned to this? Do I like the way the words are? Do I like what they're doing? Do I think this is going to work? And if the answer is no to any of those questions, tweak the spell or find a different one. Believe a little bit more in yourself because you have it in you. I remember there was a time when I didn't think I could diverge from these books and create my own spells. And now I rarely, if ever, do a spell from a book or for somebody else's spell. I just make my own. So the other thing that you want to kind of remember with your spell work and kind of bringing that belief into your spell work is, you know, having aligned actions that you take after the spells. So again, like I said, with like a job, you got to make sure that you're putting in applications. You know, with if it's a love spell, you got to be going places where you're going to meet people, or telling your friends that you're looking for a partner, or getting on dating apps or things like that. You know, if you're trying to draw in money, we got to put something out there into the universe. You know, So follow up with that aligned action. So, with money spells, it can be about, balance. You go into your checking account and kind of look at how you're spending things. Like put some time into the real world actions that go to creating wealth, and that opens up more energy for wealth to come to you. Now, the action doesn't replace the magic, it simply follows it. So, the magic, the intention, all of that. Basically, what we're doing with our magic is we're starting to create the pathway in the etheric plane and the subtle planes. And then the actions we take in this plane, the real world actions, are the ones that vibrate on this level. And so with a spell and your real world actions, you've got this intention vibrating in two different places, and it's going to increase the the efficacy of the spell. So I hope that makes sense, and just if you are somebody who, struggles with like how to do spells, again, I learned by reading the spell books and performing those spells. And then a time came when I'm like, you know what, I'm going to start kind of experimenting with my own. And I found that it was much more valuable. Or I'm not afraid, when I get past a spell from somebody else, I'm like, oh, this is a really great spell. Change the words a little bit if I don't like the way it says, or change the intention or something like that. So let's do like a little quick check-in for your own life and how to apply spiritual magnetism to something in your life right now. So really think about, what do you want to create? What is the life that you desire? What does it contain? And it's okay if you list off like 10 different things, because I think it's good to dream big and really put those dreams out there. And so really think about, what is the life I want to create? So kind of think about that. And then after you have an idea of what that life is that you want to create, is it more wealth? Is it more love? Is it more friends? Is it more confidence? After you have figured out what you want to create, then think about, what energy or what quality would help me participate in that creation. So, what does a successful business person look like? What do they do? What energy or quality could I possess that would help me participate in that creation, or get me more aligned to that creation? What does a person looking for love do? What does a person seeking more friends do? What does a person seeking to become pregnant do? What does a pregnant person do? So think about that thing you're creating, and then figure out what quality or energy you would need to be that person. And then bring it into, like, what are you going to do next? An action you're going to take. What is one choice that I could make today that expresses that energy? So going back to my pregnancy example, sleeping more, sleeping 8 to 9 hours a day. Going to the person who is, a person who's finding love, they're out and about, and they're around people, or they're on the dating apps, finding work, they're putting in their job applications. But all you need to do today is to think of one choice, one action that you could take that would express that energy of the thing that you want to create. So let's say a person wants to be more visible in a business, or they're doing they're starting to wanting to offer tarot card readings or something. So they want more visibility, right? They want more people to find them. So maybe they decide that the energy that they would need to embody for that is courage. They need more courage, right? And so what could they do to create more courage? What is that one step they could take today? Well, they could share one piece of work publicly this week. Could offer a read. Go into the tarot card example. They could offer a reading, film it, and put it up on Facebook or YouTube or Instagram. So it doesn't need to be big. It just needs to be aligned, and it gets the ball rolling. So remember, spiritual magnetism is about energy. It's about intention. It's and it begins when our energy and our intention and our next choice are all going in the same direction and not pulling us in different directions, right? So if we say, I want this thing, but then I'm over here doing this sort of feared action, my energy is being pulled into opposite directions. And alignment is putting it all going in the same direction. So your desire, your energy, and the next choice that you make. So, one of the things that can be true about this is that the work can feel easier said than done. So I make it sound easy in this in this episode. I know, but sometimes it can be hard. Once you're trying to get into alignment, that's the important beginning. But awareness does not always change our patterns. So becoming aware of what you're doing is good, but sometimes you will need more. Sometimes you need more deeper reflection, you need more repeated practice, and you need more support while you're doing this. And that is exactly what we do in our Shadow Seekers membership. So, if you ever feel like, I want to go deeper with this stuff, consider joining us in Shadow Seekers. We are right now we are changing the way that we're enrolling members, but if you are interested in doing this deeper work, reach out to me and I'm happy to help get you enrolled in Shadow Seekers now instead of waiting till we figure out what our next step is going to be with the membership. We are having a big unveiling coming soon. But if you want to get in now, just let me know, and we will help get you enrolled. Okay, so before we end and get to the Q&A, I do want to just preview what we're going to be talking about next week. So, it's one thing for us to feel aligned when everything is moving in the right direction, right? Our energy, we're vibing, we're feeling good. We start to put those steps into motion and things are happening. But what if something goes wrong? What if your energy starts to feel different? It starts to drop. Bad things happen. Old patterns return. What do we do then? And so that's really what next week is going to be about. We're going to talk about why your challenges don't automatically mean your vibration is low. Law of vibration kind of tells you that's what they mean. I don't believe that. I believe challenges are showing us places where we can spiritually grow, and it may be time for us to kind of do some work around those challenges, right? But it doesn't necessarily mean that our vibration is low. So we're going to talk about that next week. We're going to talk about how to keep those difficult periods that you go through. We'll inevitably all go through. How do we keep those from pulling us back into our old habits? So just because we feel bad doesn't mean that we got to fall back into bad habits. So we're going to talk about that. Also, how to know when the next step you need to take is to replenish your energy. Sometimes we're just vibrating low because we just need to refill ourselves up. So how do we know when to do that? We're going to talk about that as well next week. And also how to know when you're carrying somebody else's energy. We've talked about that in other episodes, but we're going to dive into that a little bit deeper as well. So remember, you do not have to control every thought that you have. You do not have to eliminate every fear. You can have fears. You can have negative thoughts. You don't have to become a completely different person to really get spiritual magnetism. Really, what you just have to do is begin choosing one place to kind of put your energy, your magic, and your action, and just start moving it all in the same direction. And that's really what spiritual magnetism is all about. All right, so I welcome any questions. It doesn't have to be about spiritual magnetism. It can be about anything that you would like to ask about related to shadow work, witchcraft, or energy work. I do have 2 questions that I'm just going to kind of talk, and then I'll see what's in our chat here. But feel free to put those in the chat as I do this. So the first question, this is from Samantha, and I'm not sure, she may have intended this to be a rhetorical question or just kind of reflection thoughts. But I thought it was a good question, and I actually think it's very aligned with our talk tonight. So and I think others will appreciate this question and answer. So Samantha asks, do our spells really work, or can we at least tell ourselves they work or explain away our failures? She said, this is always my greatest fear and question about our path, but this doubt only flags me as someone who has not practiced my craft enough to know the answer. And I actually, why I really liked this question is because I think that a lot of people probably relate. They have the same questions. Do the spells really work? Does this stuff really work? I hear this when people are really being honest.
I hear these questions all the time. And then the second part of it, she says, just even asking the question flags me as someone who hasn't practiced my craft enough. And I don't think that's true. I think that people can have practiced this craft for 30 years, 40 years, and still ask those questions sometimes. So, I believe, yes, that spells work, but as we saw in this class today, this episode tonight, the best spells are the ones that you're really behind. And, what is really happening? Is it the candles that are making the change, or is it you? Is it something in you, some way that you have changed reality and changed energy, as we've learned in, the principle of vibration? So I think, that spells can work. I don't think that all spells do. I also think that some spells are just not aligned with like what we need at that time or what our life path is. And then those will be perceived as failures because they didn't happen. I think that when we do more of our shadow work, we get more clear on what our life path is. And we stop doing spells on things that aren't part of this life path in this lifetime. So we will then, it'll appear like we have more success. And in fact, we do have more success because we're getting more clear on, what this life path is all about. But yes, I do think spells work, and I will also admit to having times when I doubt myself and I doubt my magic, and I probably most of you have those same things. If we're really being honest with ourselves, we believe in it, and then on the other hand, sometimes we doubt it. And I think it's just part of this. It's like spirituality requires a certain amount of faith and trust in ourselves and our guides and the universe and the deities, in our abilities. And I think that is part of the pathway anyway. So the fact that we're asking the question doesn't show that we're not advanced enough. It just shows that we're asking the question because it's part of the path. It's like, again, it takes that leap of faith, that leap of trust, and in realizing that when the spells don't work, we should probably do some shadow work around the intention, perhaps. So I hope that helps. I thought it was an interesting question. I really wanted to share it with you guys. Sue, she asked, she said, I've had a major shift this first half of the year, and I'm no longer in the environment that helped shape my craft work. I'm happy and excited, but still discombobulated. Any advice as I reshape my practice? Yeah. So I think that anytime we shift where we are, we shift where we live, we move to different places, we're with different partners, with different jobs. I mean, this can really, even if it's a happy thing that's happened, it can leave us feeling discombobulated, like Sue said. And especially in her case, where she's like, well, this place where I was in really shaped my craft, and now I'm in a totally different place. So I think if I were you, I would think about, what in that other place, what were the things in your craft that went really well, and the things you'd like to carry with you. And you can bring those with you into your new practice. But you can also create a totally brand new practice for the brand new environment and brand new life that you are in. And I think that it starts with just a simple, really getting clear on a regular spiritual practice that you are going to do regularly. And so I'm just going to share a link here that I had pulled up earlier from an old episode, but maybe I've lost it now. I had an episode on setting up a daily spiritual practice, and that's the one I'm going to share here. So this is a good episode. Just copy it and put it in the chat. This is an old episode, but it's a good one about how to set up a daily spiritual practice. And it has a lot of ideas in it that are maybe ones that you haven't thought of. And so what I would suggest is pick something different that you've never done before and try to do it, and set it up and do it every day or every other day, or try to do it on most days, and just see how it feels setting up a new practice in that new space and that new life that you have. And then I think over time, you'll start to really craft and develop your new practice that is part of your new life. But I would try something you've never done before because you're in a totally new space, but also kind of try to bring with you the things that worked really well from your old practice. I hope that helps. And of course, anybody else who's got some advice for Sue, you can let us know in the chat as well. Let me go back to the chat for a moment and see if there's any other questions. Andrea said, I used to slouch to make myself small, but practicing natural horsemanship is to bring your energy up. You put your shoulders back. So I practice it in other situations also. Yeah, it can help to, like anything that you're doing that helps with posture, it'll just sort of lend itself to the rest of your life as well. My slouching, I remember too, like this going back years ago, and I don't know, I was just looking at my mom and I was like, I just don't want to like end up slouched over like her. And that's where I started to kind of make these subtle shifts to change. But then becoming a yoga teacher helped me a lot too, because it's a practice that requires more posture changes, opening the chest. And then also as I started doing more energy work, I started to understand the importance of opening up the chest and the heart chakra. But yeah, I agree with Andrea. There are some things that you can do that'll just like kind of change that habit in you. Andrea said, love candles, herbs, crystals, and sigils in my spells, and also using tarot cards after. Yeah, absolutely. All right, well, I don't see any other questions, but if I missed anything, I'll go back later and answer anything I missed. And if you're watching in replay, you can drop your questions in the chat too, and I'll go back and answer those. I do want to just tell you a little bit about what's coming up. So like I mentioned, next week on 7/21, we're going to do Spiritual Magnetism Part 2. So this is maintaining energetic alignment when things get difficult. On 7/28, we're already at Lunaza time. So we're going to do our episode on Lunaza, Lammas Tide, and how to celebrate that holiday, which is coming up on 8/1 to 8/2. And then on 8/4, we're going to do an episode on the Lionsgate portal. I'm going to do kind of a forecast about this particular Lionsgate portal and some of the things that you can do to really tap into the energy of that. So leave a heart or a thumbs up somewhere in the episode. It helps us get this out to more people. Also, make sure to subscribe to our YouTube channel, Body, Mind, Witchcraft. We're trying to get monetized this year, and every video that you watch helps us out tremendously. Also, you won't miss any future episodes if you're subscribed. It'll just let you know when the new one has been uploaded. I'm also dropping a link in the chat for the Witch's Guide to Shadow Work. If you're not already signed up, sign up for that, and you'll also get on our mailing list to receive our weekly newsletter with tips on shadow work, energy work, and witchcraft. If you're watching on YouTube, that link is in the description of the video. All right, as always, it's awesome to spend Tuesday night with you. I hope you have a great rest of your night. Happy new moon as well. And act in alignment with the person you are becoming. Until next time, blessed be.